All right, welcome into the KSO Show. Mason Voth, Drew Galloway here with you, ready to go on a Friday. We've got a couple of different things that we'll get into today. We'll talk basketball in some ways. We do have, surprisingly, I know it's been a while, kind of a basketball recruiting update for you. Some semi-noteworthy things going on there, at least stuff that you should probably be aware of. So we'll hit on that. We will also just give a quick rundown and overview of K-State baseball, who's got a 3-game series in Texas again this weekend. They'll play 3 different schools, including today against number 2 LSU. So they're going to try and bounce back with more wins from what they did in Arlington last week. They're in a different Dallas suburb in Frisco this weekend. So they'll face LSU, who they've played in, and maybe not last season, but the season prior. They started the year down in the same tournament against LSU. They'll get Nebraska on Sunday, who they have on the schedule 2 more times this year. So some familiarity with all those, but we'll kind of dive into that briefly. And then basketball, in addition to the recruiting stuff, there is a game on Sunday against Colorado. Expectations are probably pretty low for a lot of people right now. So I guess we'll see just how low Drew's expectations are in that situation. And then now that we are past the midweek portion of the schedule, we'll get an updated look at how the Big 12 tournament would shake down at this point in time. I think the hope is pretty much lost for this team, but if you're somebody that wants to try and talk yourself back into it, K-State is in the situation now where the bracket would favor at least having a couple of days of fun in Kansas City. Nothing overwhelming, probably, but we'll take a look at all that. But we will start today by talking football and where we think Chris Klieman ranks amongst Big 12 coaches. Now, what spurred this on is obviously we're in the off season. We still have a ways until like spring practice starts because of the way the calendar shakes out. So it's kind of, it'll be list season again. We know how that kind of goes and everything. But what spurred this on was I got a message sent to me today from Gabe Swartz, one of my former coworkers and a well-known Arizona State alum. And one of the Twitter accounts that is amassed a large amount of followers just by like aggregating stuff or putting out kind of inflammatory things to get engagement has done just that again, as many could be assuming. They put out their ranking of 12 head coaches going into next season. Have you seen this post, Drew?
What account was it?
It was CFB Report. CFB Rep is the handle, College Football Report. They're bigger for their College Basketball Report account, which the guy that started it, back when Mark Titus and Tate Frazier were doing a podcast together that I would listen to regularly, they had the guy that started it on at one point. It was a guy named Parker. He is an Iowa State student that I think is actually an Iowa fan, oddly enough, that he started the account when he was like in high school, and it got big on Instagram and all these other things. And like, they just post stuff that it drives engagement and gets people to go, you're a freaking idiot. And look, it's happening right here. You want to take any guess on who? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I see it. It's best described as A-list. It is A-list.
The criteria, you get to certain points and you're trying to think, how does that work? How does that matter? It's got Kyle Whittingham at number 1, which if you're looking at this and you say, hey, what is like overall, what have these guys accomplished in their career? I think you'd probably have a tough time saying that anybody should be higher than Kyle Whittingham at what he's accomplished. That's fine. But we saw what Kyle Whittingham did last year. We also know that he's kind of on the way out. Like, he's been pretty transparent that he's only got maybe this season or the one after that left in him as a head coach. So then you would naturally think that Mike Gundy should probably be number 2. If you're going Kyle Whittingham as number 1, Gundy should probably be number 2. These guys had comparable seasons to each other. No, not at all. Matt Campbell is number 2, Mike Gundy at 3, Kalani Sitake at 4. BYU had a good year last year. And again, I am a Sitake fan. I just know the track record there. Sonny Dykes at 5, and then Chris Klieman at 6, Kenny Dillingham at 7, and then Deion Sanders and Joey McGuire ahead of Lance Leipold. Then Dave Aranda, Rich Rodriguez, Willie Fritz, and then the last 3 are absolutely fine. Scott Frost, Scott Satterfield, and Brent Brennan. I think I'm going to honorarily change Brent Brennan's name to Scott, because I think the 3 Scott should just be at the bottom. So Scott Brennan is at the bottom as well. So we were going to do this at some point anyways, but we'll talk about ours today.
Yeah, I will say, after the bottom 3, it does get pretty tough.
It does. It does.
Everybody is kind of the same, and also, like, it depends on what you're looking for, of like what extremes, because like Kalani Sitake has some stinky seasons and also had last year. Sonny Dykes had some stinky seasons and has been an average coach last year, and then was a great coach in year 1 at TCU.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of everything in the Big 12, and I think that's what kind of makes this season really fun, and why ranking the head coach is fun. I also enjoyed this exercise because it was a good refresher of who is actually coaching where. Like, I totally forgot that Rich Rod and Scott Satterfield were back in the Big 12.
Yeah, it just, to see Scott Frost and Rich Rodriguez back at schools they were once at, like, it feels kind of like a desperation move. Not as much for West Virginia, because like Rich Rod, he was a tough one to kind of accurately assess, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I don't know. Like, what he did at Jacksonville State was impressive. Like, he deserves props for that. But like, I don't know how you accurately grade that with everybody else. And then Scott Frost didn't even coach last year. Like, I don't think very highly of that situation. But hey, we'll get into it. We'll talk about all that today. But before we do that, I know people are going to groan. They're like, oh, here it comes. We're going to talk about Ireland again. Yes, we are going to talk about Ireland again. But I'm doing that because it is absolutely important that you listen to me today. If you are still thinking, I think I want to go, I think I want to do it, you're getting that itch. You're getting the itch that Mitch Fortner did in 2019, the day of the K-State KU game in Lawrence, where we said, I think we should go. I think we should go. And it went poorly, and that was $100 down the drain that I'll never get back. But Ireland's a different story. K-State, they've never won in Ireland, but they've also never lost in Ireland. So you've got that going for you. So today is the final day that you can purchase your tickets right now, because after that, the tickets are going to become available to the public in Ireland, the country where the game's actually being played. So single game tickets for the Aer Lingus College Football Classic are on sale now through the K-State Athletics ticket office. Tickets can be purchased online at kstatesports.com, by phone at 1-800-221-CATS, or in person at the K-State box office. You act fast. The ticket sale window closes today. Don't miss out on this unique experience. Get your tickets right now. And then you say, single game, I need the whole thing. You can do that, because the next time K-State sees a field that's in Ireland, you're going to need a way to get over there. Go ahead and check out cats2ireland.com to lock in official travel and hospitality packages at cats2ireland.com. So do that. And then next Tuesday, you'll be able to get a check-in on the Battle of the Fans to see how the split ended up working out on tickets purchased for K-State Iowa State. This past Tuesday, it was 50-50. So it is going to be a true neutral crowd over at Aviva Stadium, which apparently Chris Klieman was at recently. So there you go.
And Gene Taylor.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's gotten their trips over there.
I teased this on Wednesday, but I, shout out to Peeves on the board.
Yeah. You're stealing facts.
My homework for my fun fact done early. Daniel Whelan, current NFL punter for the Packers from Ireland, and I'm really gonna butcher this name. Enniscurry, Ireland. First NFL player born in Ireland since 1985. Weirdly though, a lot of players in the NFL in like the 1920s from Ireland. That's
interesting.
They've had 11 11 total, and 6 were before 1925. So I don't know what was going on there. Also, I know that you're probably going to ask this. Most common position, offensive lineman. 3 tackles, 3 guards.
I guess not overly surprising. I don't know where else I would have thought. I wouldn't have imagined they're producing like skill players because you probably don't have enough American football over there to create a skill guy, but like size. And I know from again my project back in like 7th or 8th grade that Ireland sucks at soccer. So I can't imagine that they're producing guys that can kick the football either.
Yeah, I'll go in and give you position wise. We got 1 kicker, 1 punter, 3 tackles, 3 guards, a linebacker, 1 running back actually in 1923, and a defensive end in 1920.
All right, love it. That's great. That's a great breakdown right there of Ireland's NFL players. So
I never would have guessed though. I never would have guessed though that they'd have more NFL players than NBA players all time.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like in like how much basketball is getting played over there? Obviously enough for Moby Ike Garuka, but for everybody else, I don't know how much you're getting out of it. All right, let's get into the reason why we're mainly here today to embrace debate and talk about our ranking of Big 12 football coaches. Because as we mentioned, College Football Report, they had a bad list to start things off. So Drew and I have come up with ours. And I did tell Drew like 2 hours ago, maybe less. It was definitely less what we were doing today.
It was less.
So he fired his off to me, and I had him do it on the fly. Let's start by revealing our bottom 3 because I think that's a telling part of the exercise. Because I went at 16, Brent Brennan, Scott Frost at 15, and Scott Satterfield at 14.
Yeah, the 3 Scotts are at the bottom. We're just going to rename Brent Brennan and Scott Brennan, and that's just going to be how it goes.
Yeah, no, that's
we had the same bottom. Okay. We had the same bottom. They're all 3. Like Scott Frost was hard to rank, but the last time we saw Scott Frost, it was not pretty.
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking, and the like him sitting out some time, and I don't think it's going to work out for him going back. So I decided that I was going to kick him down to the bottom there, and I was okay with my decision. And then Brent Brennan, the reason he's dead last for me is because I didn't think that the hire made sense at the time that it was made. And then you look at how he fared in year 1 at Arizona, and it was about what you'd expect for a coach that was pretty mediocre at San Jose State. So that's why I went the way that I did on it, and I'm cool. I'm glad to see that we're all in agreement there. Now, I would ask you this: who would be number 13 on your list? Because I went with Rich Rodriguez.
I also went Rich Rod because I don't know what to expect out of Rich Rod. Like, he was okay at his last stop at Jacksonville State, but it's not 2007 anymore, West Virginia.
Yeah,
it is cool though that he's bringing Pat White back to be an assistant. That's kind of cool. But everything else, I'm like, that's the best that you could do.
Yeah, it's they're trying. They're trying to do something. I think it was an odd move for West Virginia, but that's the one that I wouldn't rule out it not working because he was okay at times at Arizona. The Jacksonville State, he had to kind of bump him up a level, and they were fine. So I threw him in there. Is there anybody that, because we do fraud watch throughout the season, is there anybody that isn't currently in the bottom 3 or 4 that you think could be bumped down there before we kind of dive into the rest of the lists?
My number 12, I think, could be knocked down to that bottom 4.
Sonny Dykes, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at their schedule last year, TCU should have won like 10 or 11 games if they were any good.
Yeah.
But they weren't. That was the problem. That's why they won 8 games.
Yeah, no, I am in a total agreement with you. I think, it's weird. So we'll get into this when we get to like the top part of the list, but after the 2022 season, so it was 23 off season time, I did kind of a tier of Big 12 coaches and how I would kind of throw them in there. And I wish I could go back and find it now because it's so wildly different from what we currently have in the way the Big 12 is shaken out. Because I think I had Sonny Dykes at the top spot because he had just taken TCU to a national championship, and you're thinking like, if you can do that at TCU with just like piecing this thing together, then I believe in you in like a pretty significant way. But I kind of got burnt by that because he's not been very good since then. The same type of thing with some of the other guys. Like I think I had Joey McGuire probably third on that list at the time because he was creating the momentum. And now we know how it's kind of turned out since then. So I'm trying to be careful with some of my decisions here to protect myself. But at the end of the day, I think it's hard to fully do that. So as we get into it, people will see I maybe went a little aggressive and overboard with some of my other stuff. Who are some of the coaches that? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I said I went for it at the top. So
I kind of had to as like a respect thing, but we'll dive into that here in a little bit. I'll ask you the other side of that question. Who are guys that are currently not like top 5 in your mind that you give them the ability to take a jump up?
Oh, so we're just going right up the ladder for me because I have Willie Fritz at 11. Perfect. I think that Willie Fritz is probably better than the 11th best coach in the Big 12, but Houston won 4 games last year, and it felt weird to have Houston way up there or have Willie Fritz way up there, even though Houston only won 4 games, even though that was probably 2 more games than we anticipated before the season. So I think that if they make a bowl, I think Houston or Willie Fritz will probably get into that top 5 range for me.
Yeah, I think Willie Fritz is a tough one right now because it's the kind of thing where if you're probably judging what everybody has done, you would throw him up a little bit higher, like what the totality of their career has been. But we kind of have an idea of it's going to be tough at Houston. You got to get this thing figured out and moving in a better direction. And so like his job kind of holds him back for the time being, but I am with you in thinking that he could make a move, but it just may be too tough to do it. And that's why when you look at him deciding to take the Houston job, like at his age, how much sense does it actually make? And is it going to be able to work out? He's going to be one of the fascinating coaches to watch. And there's a lot of them like that. Like there's a set amount of guys right now, not necessarily a large list of them, but I would say like Chris Klieman and Matt Campbell are the 2 coaches that you feel the most secure about, and you know what they're going to do this year and for the next however many years they're at their school. It's just a matter of how do you kind of think about the other coaches and what their next steps could possibly be. And like Kenny Dillingham, for example, who we'll get to in a moment, I'm sure, is one of those that when I talk about propping Sonny Dykes up so high after his first year, like, is there a situation where Kenny Dillingham to take Arizona State from what they were when he took over and then his first year to year 2, winning the conference and being in the playoff and almost beating Texas, is there a scenario where like that's as good as it ever gets in terms of like you don't even sniff that category of play again? Like that's where I think I was trying to be a little protective, but I didn't think that I could with how I felt about him. So we'll dive into it in just a second. But I'm going to have Kenny Dillingham pretty high.
I do as well. I'm going to raise you this question as we kind of talk about Houston and Willie Fritz. Where do you think that Houston job ranks among jobs in their own state?
Well, it's worse than Texas and Texas A&M, and I think you'd have to say that Texas Tech's probably the third best job right now because of all the money that's infused into it. TCU and Baylor have the branding and like the notoriety to prop them up a little bit. It is probably of the power conference jobs in that state, it's probably the worst one. And I think, there's the opportunity that if somebody goes down there and kind of gets it moving in the right direction, it could ascend quickly. But I just think it would take a lot to do that. And as we know, these big city programs in the Power 5 or Power 4, they just, for the most part, it's a tough battle for them. Like, look right now, UCF, we just said that the worst coaches in the Big 12 are UCF, Orlando, Cincinnati. Believe it or not, they're in the city of Cincinnati. And then, Scott Brennan, that different deal. He's so bad that he doesn't need his location to affect him. But I think it makes it tough being in one of those spots, just because, like, the people that are there, you don't have the same level of support, and that is such a crucial thing in trying to build a successful college football program.
No, I just raised that question to you because I was just doing like a quick rundown. I was like, that's probably like the 7th best job in their own state. So that's probably never a good sign.
Yeah. All right. Top 5 coaches for Drew and I. I'm going to throw them up for everybody to look at. Drew and I were actually 1 through 4 the exact same. So I think a lot of similar thinking for us there. Our 5 spot could be easily argued for one reason or another. So this is what we did for our top 5 coaches in the Big 12. We both went Kenny Dillingham at the top, Chris Klieman at 2, Matt Campbell at 3, Kyle Whittingham at 4. And then I still, even though like I'm going to make jokes about him, I'm going to kind of crap on him and everything. I put Joey McGuire at 5, but that's because it's such a jumbled mess in the middle of the league, and you can poke holes in a lot of guys. Also, if things hadn't gone the way they did last year, I probably still have Lance Leipold somewhere in the top 5. And then Drew put Mike Gundy, which I can understand having him there. I just didn't because I think the trajectory of where things are going for Gundy isn't great. I had Mike Gundy at 9, actually, but we can get into all that. What had you put Kenny Dillingham at the top after 2 seasons?
There's a couple reasons. One is how bad the situation in Arizona State was when he got there. Like, that looked like a program that was going to fade into oblivion because of Herm Edwards. And Kenny Dillingham was okay in year 1 and really took that jump in year 2. The other reason is that he's super young, super energetic. I think Arizona State is actually like his dream job as an alum. And he's a super fun play caller. And I have a soft spot for like the younger guys that are really offensive oriented, and they do a lot of fun things. And you really look at what they did last year. Arizona State talent wise, they had Cam Scattaboo and then Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson. But other than that, it's not like they're like a supremely talented team. The hiccup is probably that he is only on his 2nd year, about to be on his 3rd year. So like this could easily come back and bite us in the butt this time next year.
Yeah.
But you look at that and there's so many things that point to him being at least at minimum at a top 3 coach in the conference than not, because of what he did with what he had. I mean, like I said, Arizona State had 3 guys that I think every Big 12 team would take. And then after that, I'm not sure how many other players that they would have had.
Yeah, they have 1 offensive lineman, but that, like, that's about it. And I think the reason that I did it was, they were terrible. The Herm situation had them screwed. They looked like it wasn't going to be possible to do much. And then to go from what they were last year to even this year, and to do it that quickly and at that level is impressive. Like, I was giving Joey McGuire credit for going from like 4-8, 5-7. Actually, well, shoot, Tech was like 6-6 the year that he got fired. So Matt Wells got fired. So I don't like Joey McGuire made him 2 wins better
and
the next
5-3 when Matt Wells was fired.
Yeah, actually, I need to go back and look at 20. They made Texas Tech that year might have won 7 games. I think they might have gone 7-6. They did. They went 7-6. So you know what happened the very next year with Joey McGuire? I gave him credit for having one more win. They went 8-5 that first year. The thing with Dillingham is there is some recruiting momentum, not to the extent of Texas Tech, but he came in and he took a crappy team. He made them scrappy his first year in the Pac-12, which was, had a lot of good teams, including the fact that they went toe-to-toe at Washington for a stretch that first year. Then last year, they come into the Big 12. They get used to it early. They dominate late. They hang with Texas in there. Obviously, the energy that Dillingham has, like himself as a coach, you would think that is a plus. And it just seems more sustainable because they've also proven to be good at some of the other things too, like the transfer portal. They've hit on that, like to bring in Tyson and to bring in Levitt. Like those are guys from P4 programs that you said that's the kind of transfer we want to get the most out of him. You got it. And then even though Scadaboo was a transfer portal guy, I would put him into a different category of like evaluation being sky high because they got him from Sacramento State. And I don't know that anybody else would have been interested in Cam Scadaboo. And he was probably the most important player in college football last year to a team's success. Maybe Ashton Genty would be higher just because Levitt was good. Tyson was a great receiver. But I really think in terms of holding everything together and doing what you do, like Arizona State, they could get in the game, and if they're struggling, it's just give the ball to Scadaboo and let him save us. And he did it for the most part. So that's why I put him at number 1. And then Chris Klieman's at 2 because he's been the most consistent coach in the Big 12 since he took over. Yeah, 2020, whatever. We know that 2020 doesn't count. And again, if you're going to fight me on that, I've got a ton of pieces of evidence to explain to you why 2020 does not count, why it doesn't matter. But every other year, it's been pretty good. He's obviously on this stretch of at least 9 wins in 3 straight seasons, the Big 12 championship in there. He's recruiting at a higher level than what K-State has, in this era of which we're in now. Obviously Bill Snyder did a fantastic job in 1.0, but different time period back then. Chris Klieman's having to do it in this era. He's doing it in a good way. And K-State's floor right now with Chris Klieman is 8 wins. Like that's a good spot to be in. And you feel like the expectation that he has created now at K-State is going into every year, you think you should have a chance to win the Big 12. And you can't say that for when he took over. And you couldn't say that for really any time after 2014 with Bill Snyder being back here for 2.0. So I gave him the 2 spot because of what he's accomplished and how he's kind of positioned things moving forward. Easily, there could be an easy argument for him to be number 1 too. So like, I don't want if somebody had him at number 1, I wouldn't disagree. But I felt like Dillingham probably earned it here. And like you said, we could be wrong on that.
No, I'm right there with you. He is easily the most consistent. And I think that there's something to that. And it's why I really tussle with going with him at number 1 as well. I see somebody saying that they can't get over the hump. K-State won a Big 12 championship like 2 years ago. That is getting over the hump. And I also wanted to put an emphasis on the coaches that have Big 12 championships being a little bit higher. Like that's why I have Gundy at 5. I didn't have Dave Aranda as high as, I probably could have and should have.
Yeah, we think he's a fraud
based on him having a ring. But I was more like, I just don't know what Baylor is really like at going into next season. But I'll get into Matt Campbell a little bit. I wrestled with Matt Campbell at the 2 spot, but it came down to him not having a Big 12 championship. And then Kyle Whittingham and Mike Gundy. It's just the longevity. And I mean, I'll be completely transparent here. The reason that I put Gundy at 5 is because I had Whittingham at 4. Like I felt like I couldn't have
They're
one
kind of
of
the
the top
same guy.
5 without the other.
Yeah. That's fair. My thinking on it is that if I had to pick one right now that I felt more confident in kind of being able to grab back onto the reins and get the buggy moving in the right direction again, it's Whittingham, because you could essentially go and just say, well, chalk up what's happened the last couple of seasons to his quarterback not being healthy. And okay, that's fine. But as we've talked about, like, this is where the Gundy and Whittingham thing is so funny, is that not only do they have these great legacies at their school now and getting them to heights that their school has never achieved and may never achieve again, neither one is also recruiting quarterbacks right now. Like their game plan was to have a 20th year senior quarterback them these last couple of years. And for Utah, Cam Rising got hurt again. And for Oklahoma State, it was Alan Bowman. Alan Bowman played like Alan Bowman was supposed to play finally. So I just think Whittingham has a better chance of getting it back on track. I'm not really confident that he does, especially because he's the one that, like, again, he said it at Big 12 Media Day last year. Utah's supposed to play a game in Las Vegas in like 2028, maybe. I'd have to go look to make sure. But he made the comment that he probably won't be the head coach for that game. Yeah, 2027. They play Miami in Las Vegas. And I think they've already named a head coach in waiting at Utah as well. So, like, this is probably Kyle Whittingham's last year. So the argument there would be, like, what incentive does he have to really try to do much different now? Obviously, go out on a high note, but he probably could still be stubborn enough to say that the high note is doing what I've always done. That's how I'm going to do this thing. Gundy, at least, he's younger than Whittingham, and he obviously is passionate about being the head coach at Oklahoma State, and does not want to lose that job. So maybe that's where it is. But I think Whittingham, as it stands right now, might be the slightly better option. But I totally get it. I would have considered it. I just think 4 or 5 years ago, we had the conversation about, like, Gundy's not going to be able to survive in this changing era of college sports. That was before, like, NIL and the transfer portal really blew up in a big way. Like that was when that was when we were having Mike Gundy versus his players because of a t-shirt he wore while out fishing during COVID. It's like, we thought that was going to be the undoing of Mike Gundy. Well, now there's stuff that actually impacts what happens on the field, and he's not doing a good job at handling it. So that's where I would go. I mentioned why I put Joey McGuire where I did. He's doing a good job. They have the resources. So, like, what he has to do to get Texas Tech to winning at a high level doesn't have to be as impressive as what these other coaches do, because he's got some of the better funding and resourcing in the Big 12 as it currently stands. He's just got to find a way to go out and get the job done. But I want to hit on more of the Klieman aspect here, because I had Matt Campbell at 3. The same thing. I think Chris Klieman and Matt Campbell are very similar coaches in terms of what they have accomplished, the spots that they're doing their jobs in, the longevity that they'll probably have if they won it at their current schools. But it just comes down to, I think Chris Klieman has achieved more than Matt Campbell. And it's, Matt Campbell's been to 2 Big 12 title games. He's lost both of them. Chris Klieman's been to 1. He won it. And it should also be, like, remembered for people, Matt Campbell had maybe the greatest collection of talent that an Iowa State football team has ever had. It took the 2020 COVID year for them to go to a New Year's 6 game where they beat an Oregon team that I think went like 3-2 that year. And then the next year they brought everybody back and they underachieved. And then he had a season where he goes below 500, doesn't make a bowl game. Like, I think there are a number of K-State fans that are way too sensitive and about, like, what Klieman has or hasn't done, and also propping up more of what Campbell has done despite accomplishing either the same thing but slightly less. I think that it's a weird spot to kind of look at it. And like, I'm not going to disagree with Chris Kim here, who says in the comments, like, since winning the Big 12 conference, it was a 7-9 win season. Klieman at best will go 3-0 during non-conference, 6-3. Look, that's just kind of how this thing goes. Like, coaches have these ups and downs. There's no denying that November of last year was a disastrous month for K-State and not good, but there's no reason to believe that is just going to happen every year under Chris Klieman. And so much of football is about building from one year to the next. And the real missed opportunity, if people want to talk about where the issues were, the real missed situation is probably K-State should have been better the year after they won the Big 12 title. But they lost a lot of talent to the NFL from that team. So, like, that's a rebuild. Then you're in a tough spot because of the quarterback situation. And that's where you can maybe make the argument that you should have just halfway through that season jumped into the Avery Johnson business and not let Will Howard finish out the regular season and just say, you know what, for what's better for us long term, we do this. Because instead of having 2023 be Avery Johnson's first, year and kind of learn all these things, you had to go through that process in 2024. And so, like, this is the year to judge Chris Klieman and K-State. If K-State underachieves again, and they don't even need to make the Big 12 title game for me to be okay with what happened this year, because we know that tiebreakers could get so wonky. I think they'll be there. I think K-State and Arizona State are probably the two that I would pick right now to be there. But if they have another underwhelming year, you look at it and you say, okay, that is a little disappointing. You're also, it feels like wasting the opportunity that you had with one of the best quarterbacks that could have been in K-State history with Avery Johnson. So, like, this is a massive year for Chris Klieman, but I'm still very dismissive and really frustrated by the way that people handle and treat Chris Klieman and what happened last year and the last 2 years and everything. Like, I get it. It's not good enough. 8-4 regular seasons aren't the most fun because they come with losses that you didn't think should have happened. But man, like, I still think he's a really good coach. And if you're getting pissed off at Klieman for not winning the Big 12 2 years after he won it, I don't know what to tell you. Like, Bill Snyder won it in 2003, and he choked in a bunch of years before that, and then he retired and had to come back, and he won it 9 years later, and then he never won it again in the 6 years after. He had a 6-6 team that shouldn't have probably even made it to a bowl game that did. Like, there you go. He had 5-7, like, got him fired. It takes time. Like, teams do not just dominate conferences, especially in the Big 12 now that Oklahoma is gone. Like, you have to be a certain type of program to really just rip them off one after another. And nobody in the Big 12 is currently set up to do that. There may be periods where a team can win 2 in a row or 2 of 3, 2 of 4, but to expect it just to be year after year, you're going to have some of those disappointing moments, and you'll have to get over them. You just hope that you bring back enough and guys develop out to where the year after that they're ready to go. And that's kind of the position that K-State is in this year with how much they are going to bring back in terms of, well, what you expect offensively. And then we think they've made some great additions in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I'll just say that if you get pissed off about 8-4 or 9-4, that just means that the program's in a really good spot. Like, there are a lot of people or a lot of teams that would really crave the success that K-State's had in the last 3 years that has led to people being upset right now that they went 9-4 last year.
And so the other thing that
that's
people,
just my take on it.
The other thing that people don't understand is that the reason why you might be pissed off that K-State went 8-4 or 9-4 the last 2 years is because of Chris Klieman. Like, Chris Klieman got you to be in that position. It's like what I said earlier in this is 2019, the expectation was not for K-State to win the Big 12. 2020, the expectation was not for K-State to win the Big 12. 2021, you look at it and you go, I guess maybe you thought they could have been a little bit better, but I don't think. 2022, you thought, hey, there are going to be some pieces here. You could do it. And guess what? They did it. And then the year after that, like, that's where it shifted. That's where everybody thinks now K-State is at the big boy table. They need to be one of the big boys. I think there's a pretty good consensus that a lot of people think that K-State is set up to be one of the top 3 programs in the Big 12 moving forward. I think going into last year, people would have said K-State, Oklahoma State, and Utah. Those are the 3 that we feel like can kind of run this thing. Well, guess what? 2 of those schools completely fell off the wagon last year, and K-State was the only one still trucking along. And so now you look at it and you say, okay, it's probably K-State, Arizona State, Iowa State, Texas Tech that you would throw into that mix of having the opportunity there. So, like, Chris Klieman has also, like, and this happens with everybody, you become the victim of your own success. That's what Chris Klieman has done. He's the one that has molded what the mindset of a lot of fans are and why people are mad at him. So he does have to go out and prove that they can be better this year. K-State needs to win 9 regular season games at the very least this year, because if it is another 8-4 regular season, then I can side a little bit more with the people that are frustrated right now. 8-4 should not happen this year unless something drastic happens in a bad way to integral pieces of this team. But the season hasn't happened yet, and the season is playing out in front of us.
I'm also of the opinion, like, I see Chris again commenting, he's a good coach, but besides 1 year, the Big 12 title, his record is very similar. I hate to break this to you, but pretty much every coach in the Big 12 is like that, or they got worse. Like, look at Matt Campbell when when Matt Campbell hasn't gotten to the Big 12 title game, his records are 8-5, 8-5, 7-6, 7-6, 4-8, 7-6. Like, who would you put in that second spot if you're not going to put Klieman there? Because Kyle Whittingham is the same way. Mike Gundy is the same way. Like, a lot of these coaches, it's a remarkable feat to be so consistent in this era of college football. Like, of course, if they're not making the Big 12 title, their records are going to be pretty similar to what they had before, because that's why they're so consistent.
Yeah, well, and you think about it, then a guy like, some of these lists with where they put Kalani Sitake is interesting, because he's a guy that if you go and look at what he's done, obviously you don't have a conference to kind of base things off of. And I might undervalue him some, because I think so much about early on there and how things were trending. And then, like, 2020, like, he has an 11-1 season at BYU. That was 2020. Do you know how many other teams in the country played 12 games that season? Maybe 2.
Not many.
Or actually, it was probably 1, and it was probably Alabama, who played in the SEC and then had to play 2 playoff games. Like, so 2020, as I've said, is a wash. He had a good 2021. They went 10-3, but, like, you can't judge them accurately, because go through and look at that schedule. Who they beat that season. They beat Utah. Okay. They beat Arizona State. Arizona State that season, they ended up going 8-5. All those wins got vacated because of the Herm Edwards stuff. They beat South Florida. They beat Utah State. They beat Washington State, Virginia, Idaho State, Georgia Southern, and a USC team that went 4-8, and Clay Helton got fired. They lost to Boise State, Baylor, and UAB. So, like, that's not fine, whatever. But, like, everybody goes through this stuff. And that's why we have certain coaches that are at the highest peak of this that are so impressive, because they don't go through stuff like that. But in the Big 12, it's really tough to separate yourself and get something rolling. And that's why a guy like Kenny Dillingham should concern people that at the top spot, because there would, in theory, be a way to see him getting that going. Or if Joey McGuire proved to be a better coach than he was a recruiter or motivational speaker, then Texas Tech would be in a much more dangerous position in the Big 12 currently.
There's also a chance, though, like we've said, that Dillingham dips. So it is really tough to evaluate some of these coaches that are just young or newer to the Big 12, like Kalani Sitake. But I just don't think that being consistent and winning 8 or 9 games is a bad thing. Like,
yeah,
if K-State wins 9 regular season games this year, I'm not going to be super upset about it, I don't think.
Yeah. Nope, I agree with that. All right, let's move on and talk basketball. People really like basketball, Drew. Right now, it's a fun thing to talk about. We'll start on the recruiting side of this because there is a little bit of news here. K-State is going to get an official visit this week from Ashton McGee, and then Thomas Basong is a 2025 guy that just got offered, who conveniently took an official visit to UCF during the middle of the week while K-State was down there playing. But he's kind of an intriguing option, currently playing with Overtime Elite, and he is like a 6'8", kind of a combo of a guard and a forward. So pretty fascinating to see what that does. And that one really intrigues me, actually. So I'll let you kind of roll on Ashton McGee and Thomas Basong.
Yeah, so Ashton McGee, when K-State first offered, it was about a couple weeks ago, maybe closer to like a month and a half ago at this point. And he was kind of a relative unknown. And to see what he has really done, I think that looking at his senior season and the last video that we got from Armand Jovic, that has a lot of his highlight tape. His highlights look a lot better, even in the last few weeks, than I really anticipated them looking. He's averaging 23.5 points a game and 8.3 rebounds during his senior season. Really, really athletic. Like some of these dunks, he gets off with absolute ease, which is really fun. I saw people before that I watched his video talk about how his jump shot looks a little funky. I expected it to look like Xavier Sneed level. There isn't a ton of problems that I see with his jump shot, except I think he holds the ball a little too high, which I think that's kind of the problem, and that he needs to get it a little bit lower. But I think he's a really intriguing option from Mississippi. I wouldn't be surprised based off of where this is kind of trending and going. I would imagine it probably gets wrapped up this weekend. Like, if he is a fit and K-State really wants him and K-State needs a high school prospect, I harped on that for a long time on the post-game live after the UCF game.
Yeah.
That I think that it makes total sense for McGee and K-State to come together. And like you, I'm very intrigued about Thomas Basong. He doesn't have any recruiting profiles because I think a lot of people assumed he would just go pro after playing at Overtime Elite, because he's been really good for the Overtime Elite stuff this season. As one of their Defensive Player of the Year finalists, he is also a freak athlete. I'd like to see a little bit more of a jump shot from him on some of the highlights, but he looks like a guy that is super, super athletic and can really jump and really dunk, and makes a little bit more sense, I think, because if you're going to take a swing on two guys in this class, I think that you want them to be really high level athletes that can shoot a little bit. And McGee has proven that he can shoot a little bit. And I would imagine that Basong can, because they have him as a 6'8" guard. So I imagine he can do a little bit shooting.
Yeah, Basong is the one that intrigues me. There's just not enough known about that right now, but it's obviously a recruit that is picking up some more steam. It's interesting to me. The size that's there. He's 6'8". I think I saw 7'3" wingspan. And yeah, they list him as a guard or a forward. So that would be the one that I think like there's some upside there. And then Ashton McGee is like a good example of the type of guy that K-State probably, maybe not to this extent, because like McGee is a product of waiting around so long and getting so far behind the 8 ball. But K-State really needs to start working with the 2026 and 2027 timelines of guys to, like we said after the show against UCF, and then I did it yesterday in the mailbox, was like live in the 40 to 150 range for recruits, and you can land those guys. And then the hope is that if you bring in 3 a year, one of them is going to hit for you, and then you can retain them. And over the next couple of years, you keep adding to it. You only have to add a few pieces from the portal to make you better. Like, essentially, look at what Bruce Weber had at the tail end of it, where he did that with Nigel Pack's class. Like, Nigel Pack was in the same freshman class as Montavious Murphy and Antonio Gordon, I think. Or yeah, I think that was his crew. I'd have to go back and check for sure.
I think it was both Gordon's, Pack, and Montavious Murphy.
Let's see. So what that would have been,
And
was that
Dalton,
2022 class for, no, that would have been 21 class for Pack, I think. I know this is exciting for everybody to look at. No, maybe it was the 2020 class. We're lost here. Okay, it was 2020. The 2020 recruiting class for K-State was Nigel Pack, Selton Miguel, Davion Bradford, Luke Kasubke, Carlton Lingard was involved in that as well. But as we saw, Nigel Pack hit. He was number 124 in the nation. Selton Miguel was number 128. Davion Bradford was number 144. Miguel and Bradford did not hit at K-State. And the disappointing part about it is that Bradford, at the end of that freshman year, you thought maybe that was, and you thought K-State had hit on two of the guys. You thought Pack and Bradford were going to be really good. If Bruce stays, maybe Pack stays, who knows? But obviously the change and everything. But if Jerome Tang can get his version of that class and you get a Nigel Pack, somebody that you can then retain, that will benefit you. And that's where you kind of need to start to live with this, is these guys that they're 4 stars for a reason. They're ranked nationally for a reason. It just may take longer to get them there. You should never bring a freshman unless they're like a top 10 guy into a college basketball program and expect them to contribute in a major way the following season, their freshman year. But you should expect to see traits that, okay, I like that, we can bring him along. And that's why you want to keep a guy like David Castillo. Is, again, you don't need to bend over backwards to keep some of these guys if they decide to leave. But you keep a guy like David Castillo because, again, he was ranked the way he was for a reason, and hope that you can get him developed and it'll come along at some point and it'll work out. And then that way you don't have to dip into the portal to try and replace that. So this is a start for them. It's good that they're, I think, realizing some of the corrections that need to be made, but we won't really get a full idea of it until probably this time next year or even closer, when we know what the 2026 recruiting class would look like. And the 26 guys are going to sign in the fall of this year. So you may already be a little behind in that category. You may have to this may be selling out for 2027 to be the big year where we see the shift back for K-State.
The shift to now get high schoolers. I mean, these are the two guys that you got to really take a gamble on. McGee being just kind of an unheralded guy that has really exploded his senior season, and then Basong, who probably was flirting with just going pro, and now is thinking more about college. But I'm really intrigued about both guys. Basong, also French. I don't know if we pointed that out. So again,
yes,
I've been watching Court of Gold, which has been really fun to watch on Netflix. The French basketball program has just really came a long way, and seeing that really progress throughout the show, I thought was fascinating. So I'm really intrigued about Basong for that as well.
Yeah. All right. Couple of other things to get into. K-State, Colorado this weekend. Drew, how excited are you for this?
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. It's
I legitimately do not know what to expect going into Sunday. I'm a little bit worried about where K-State's at, because Colorado has been at least playing harder the last few games. So I don't have a great feeling.
Yeah, the concerning thing right now is that I think the mindset is back to where it was after that loss to to Texas. Was it Texas Tech or what? Well, actually, it was more so Oklahoma State and Houston, that stretch where it was like, this team may not win another game this year. And there's less games left, and it feels like we're kind of back in that spot. I don't know. It's going to take something for this team to kind of get it out without Coleman Hawkins out there. And this is what you didn't want at the end of the year, is for a lot of people to get to the point where they just feel like, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. That's where it sits right now with K-State, Colorado. So I'm not expecting a great crowd on Sunday in Bramlage because, like I said, how many people are wanting to spend their last day before work, when they could be spending time with family? The weather's been nice recently. Like, you're not going to want to spend it to go drive 4 hours round trip to watch a basketball team that's losing games play bad basketball against an even worse basketball team.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of research into the Vegas and NIT tournaments than like their requirements like I probably should. Do you have to be above 500 to get into any of these?
I don't think so. I know the NIT had dropped that requirement. I still don't know that they would go below it. I don't know what the Vegas one will require. The only thing is right now, like I don't even know that K-State has to worry about how that'll end up working because of where they sit. Because of I'd have to be a little bit more up to date on what I think the Big 12 will end up getting NCAA tournament wise, because the top two teams that don't make the NCAA tournament, they are automatically into the college basketball crown that Fox is putting on. So like right now, TCU would probably be in there. Baylor is going to be on the verge of being in there, I would imagine. Cincinnati would be in play for that. So it's going to be fascinating. And then, K-State could be in the mix, but it just depends on how they finish out here. If you get a couple wins, maybe, I don't know. So it just says that 2 automatic qualifiers from each of the Big East, Big 10, and Big 12 conferences, as well as 10 at-large teams will be selected from the pool of teams that did not qualify for the NCAA tournament. There's no selection criteria.
It would feel a little bit gross having postseason basketball at 13 and 19.
It says that net rankings would be used to select teams. So we'll see. I don't know if they're going to expand this into some other schools and let them in or what, but we'll have to see how that goes as well. So I don't know. We'll see. Actually, I'm looking here right now. Let's see. I don't know. I'm going to have to read more into this. I don't even care though. Right now, I'm just, basketball's broken me. It's not enjoyable at this point. They could win. I mean, we'll be there watching on Sunday. Obviously, you'd still like them to win. Wins are more fun than losses, but it doesn't matter. Nothing matters right now for this team. You just want to see guys that could come back, play well, and give you a reason. Updated look at what the Big 12 tournament bracket would look like at this point in time. Some changes. Iowa State currently kicked out of the double bye. BYU takes that final slot. Arizona and Texas Tech have flopped spots, and then K-State now down to the 11 seed. They would play UCF. Utah would play Arizona State, Colorado and West Virginia, and Cincinnati and Oklahoma State. Winner of K-State UCF would get Kansas. You probably do not want that if you're K-State in that situation. So maybe at least get bumped up so you could play TCU or something. But again, this is where we talked about, like, if you catch lightning in a bottle again and say, again, I don't know that we have a great indication of how long Coleman Hawkins will be out. I don't think he plays again the regular season. Maybe he would be back and you try to give it a go for something like this. Then you can maybe talk yourself into buying that path. This is where you wanted it. Like, this is the part of the bracket you wanted. I don't think you want to see Iowa State and Houston in the same portion, but in reality, I don't know that it really matters at this point, but that's a look at how things are shaping up currently in the Big 12.
No, I'll only add, we'll be there for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at a minimum, and potentially Friday. There are some sick basketball games on Tuesday that I cannot wait to watch.
Those are all sick. I mean, they are all disgusting. So that'll be exciting. That'll be a fun day.
Tuesday will be a great Big 12 eats day for you and I.
It's better to have four gross games in one day than two. Because then you can just make
I agree.
Oh, this is exciting, this is fun. When it was two gross games on loser day, it's just like, this is terrible. Why? Now you can go and you can just kind of laugh game after game at what's taking place in front of you. One final thing before we get out of here: K-State baseball starts in what that would be like 3.5 hours. First pitch against number 2 LSU down in Texas. That's a look at what they've got coming up this weekend, the slate. You can watch the games on D1 Baseball. I'm sure you have to pay money, so I won't be doing that.
You do.
Okay,
it's a yearly subscription.
A yearly subscription?
Yes.
Like, I can't just buy it for a month?
I think that they make you pay for the whole year.
Okay, I'm going to do some investigating right now.
I saw somebody on the board say that it was a yearly subscription, and I was like, yep, that's an absolute no-go.
Well, so some guy, it says watch stream the Frisco Classic in Las Vegas. Okay. Some guy commented and said, this is bleeping awful. I paid for a monthly subscription plus streaming, and I've been trying to pull the game up for over an hour. I've Googled how to do it and have clicked every place I can on the website, and I can't find the game. Ridiculous. Okay, so that doesn't seem like a positive for anybody on how this thing is going to go.
D1 baseball is essentially flow sports, so take that with what you will.
Oh, here we go. I found the let's see, D1 baseball. Oh, you can do a monthly, but it's, oh my goodness, these guys. Hey, props to you on capitalism, I guess, but $35 for the first month and then $15 for the following months if you do the D1 baseball plus streaming, whereas the annual is $160. I don't care enough about college baseball. I would implore everybody out there, you have to really love college baseball. If you don't, do not purchase anything like this. It is a total waste of money for you. Because college baseball as a whole, as a product, is not great. So yeah,
this is probably something that
that's highway
this
robbery.
This is probably something that I could ask after we're done recording. Is this Mitch calling these games on radio, or is this going to be smaller?
I'm guessing it's going to be smaller since he went down to Texas last weekend. There's an easy way for me to check. Let me look here.
The women play Sunday, so I just wasn't sure.
Actually, it will not be any of those guys. Yeah, Mitch, I guess probably he had to be there for the men on Sunday.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So it will be Wade Gershner that will be on the call for K-Man. So there you go.
Listen to Wade and yes, listen to Wade and don't give D1 baseball $1 bajillion.
Yeah, it's just not worth it. It is not worth it, folks. I'm just telling you right now.
$35 for the first month is the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
I mean, I guess if you really are into K-State baseball or baseball in general, you think to yourself, hey, that's like $11 a game, a little over $11 a game. I can do that. That's fine. It just doesn't feel like that's worth any time. Flow has to be a better deal than that, right?
And
we crap on Flow.
So.
Let me look here.
Flow, I think, might be $19 a month if I remember right.
All right, I'm not gonna do the work on that because I don't even want to create an account to find out. Plus I'm still probably paying since Bruce took him to the Cayman Islands 6 years ago.
Oh,
so
Flow was also impossible to cancel a subscription.
Yeah, they make it tough. They make it tough on you. So everybody listening to K-State Baseball and K-Man starting at 2:00 today. That's the best way to take in whatever they're calling this tournament down in Frisco. See if the Batcats can take down number 2 LSU for a 4th straight ranked victory. Drew and I will be back on Sunday evening after K-State, Colorado. Well, actually, it probably won't be Drew with me. It'll probably be Fan, but somebody will be with me. We'll talk about K-State, Colorado, whether you want to listen to it or not. We'll be there. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching, listening to the KSO Show.